All right. Well, welcome in to the very first episode, 10 to Go Radio. Dan,
I'm Dan.
and I'm Honorary Boomer. We had a little bit of what I'll call a rain delay in getting this started out. I'm also adjusting to hearing myself. It's a little bit new, and I
Wait,
don't know if I can turn it off.
you can hear yourself?
Yeah,
I can't hear
100%.
myself.
Oh no.
No, you got some black magic shit going on over there, fella. I don't know what
I
you did.
don't know what it is.
It's like if you've ever like accidentally like hit your hand on the keyboard and turned on some stupid shit and like you don't know what button turns it off.
I know what it is now. It's
What's
Discord.
that?
So we're fixed.
Oh.
We're good to go. So I just told Discord to like kick rocks. We just
Hmm.
had security escort them from the track, and now we're set to go. I'm not hearing myself anymore, so that
Hmm.
helps a lot.
That's good.
Um, so let's jump right into it. So this is our first episode. This is kind of a new deal for us. We've talked about this, Dan, since
Hmm.
Texas, since Atlanta. When did this first come up?
So this started originally because like we talked about originally doing it when we were at Texas Motor Speedway. And then, because what it was is it was that we were in VC with Gray, and we were sitting there with our phones like microphones, like talking about the race and stuff. And so we talked about doing it since then, and then we talked about it again in Atlanta, and we didn't do it in Atlanta. And then this time we're like, listen, we either need to like get this thing going, or we need to quit fucking talking about it.
100%, 100%. And here we are, actually doing it.
Yes,
That's
sir.
uh, that's true. So your first race, Dan, was at Texas Motor Speedway,
It was.
and so now you've got that Atlanta and uh, I want to say Road America there, sort of the Americas under your belt.
Yeah.
So you've got a road course, a super speedway, and a speedway. What are your thoughts? I mean, compare and contrast those. It's interesting to hear from a guy that's been to six races.
Yeah, so I mean, the biggest thing ultimately is it's like you said something while we were there that was really interesting because you were like, usually when you're on like a normal speedway, and I guess to an extent even a super speedway, like you have line of sight of the cars the entire time. And what was kind of interesting about the road course was that you didn't have that. There were clear times where people were going out of your field of view. And like I didn't feel like nearly like the eye strain and stuff of like watching that race, but it's really interesting the fact of like the because like for me like I didn't notice a ton of difference between like just like a normal speedway and the super speedway, right? Other than like because they have like more like it banks more, I think is one of the differences between the two.
Yeah.
Um, but I actually really like the road course a lot more.
I did too. Strangely enough, this was my first road course too. The only thing that I didn't like is that there's a lot of things I didn't even know. Like I
Mm,
was trying to follow Connor Zilic. Okay, so and we'll get into that later when we talk about our Xfinity race. But
mhm.
I had no idea that he got hit. I just knew that like when he came around,
Yeah.
at the beginning of the Cup race,
Hmm.
something was very wrong, and he had to
Yeah.
get his car fixed.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know what went wrong with our scanners, but like we couldn't hear people most of the race, and I feel like that would have helped a lot too because there's communication usually over that radio, where the spotter communicates to the driver what happened, so that they have a little bit of an idea. One of my favorite drivers to listen to after they get hit is Chase Elliott because he's like, I'm gonna put this guy on the wall, but before I do, just make sure I didn't do anything wrong. Make sure it's not my fault.
Uh-huh.
And they're like, yeah, it wasn't your fault. Good, I'm gonna put him on the wall. So it's like, that's where you really gotta trust your team
Hmm.
and get that immediate feedback. And we just didn't have that with this. One thing we did have this time around was the
I think I know where this is
intercoms.
going. What's that?
Yeah, the
So
intercoms.
yeah, so I was gonna say I was like, we didn't hear a whole lot from the team on the radio, but we heard a hell of a lot from a bunch of other people over the radio.
That too.
Yeah, no, I was actually really glad that we ended up getting the radio comms. and ended up using them. It made a world of difference in like my overall enjoyment of the race. Because like if you can get into the race, like if we get like if you're listening to a driver that's got something interesting going on, it's like you can kind of like zone in and do it, right? But if we're like, switching signals and doing whatever, everyone's just kind of sat there. You're just, hey, fella, you got some Bieber nuggets I can have, right? But
For
uh,
sure.
having having the comms made it, I think for me, made it a lot more enjoyable because like you got to have the discourse. Like I felt as somebody who doesn't know my ass from my elbow with NASCAR, I felt way more clued in because I was able to like ask questions.
Well, that's good to hear, and that's kind of one of the things that we want to bring to this podcast is somebody
Hmm.
that's really really into NASCAR,
Yeah,
100%, and somebody that really is into Buzz Lightyear. You know,
dude, this is my G right here. This
I think
was,
that's awesome.
I know, man. Like that's I don't know. I've always liked Buzz Lightyear. It's always been.
For sure, I
It,
agree with you, brother. But I mean,
yeah.
that's the thing is like you're trying to learn more about NASCAR, and I feel like some of our listeners are in that same boat.
Hmm.
So if I ever like go off the rails on something and I lose you, uh,
Hmm.
don't be afraid to reel me back in. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, the benefit to anybody listening who isn't super big into NASCAR is that by comparison to Mr. Boomer, I am kind of the village idiot. So I don't know a whole lot and I get lost a whole lot. Like what was the name of the guy that we were rooting for with the Xfinity
Yeah,
race?
Connor Zilich.
Connor Zilich. What a race, man! Like, can we talk about that, or are we too early yet?
We are a little bit early. We'll come back around to that. I'm excited to
Okay, we
talk
can come
about
back.
that
We
too.
can come back to him.
So
Yeah.
so
Sorry, Connor. I got a busy schedule to keep to.
we've got our 10 items. That's the whole point of the
Okay.
10 to go radio, right?
Okay.
And so we've talked about our first one, kind of a recent story, I guess our NASCAR history, if you
Yeah.
will. And so our next one here is lap 9. Uh, some of what went wrong. So I'd like to call this our caution lap. You know, it's
Okay.
kind of boring, kind of negative. Um, but what went wrong at Coda? You know, do you have anything?
I mean, I can think of about lap nine, not particularly. I can think of a lot of things that went wrong at Coda.
Well, not necessarily lap 9. That's just the name of our
Oh, we're like
for our
on the
listeners can
naming.
keep track of what point
Oh,
we're on, and we're on point 9 right now.
I see. I see. I must have. I didn't read the memo.
It's okay.
Um, so Coda was like it was the most backwards experience that I've ever had compared to any other NASCAR, right? Let's just talk about like when I got there, right?
Sure.
So like there's two gates that are designated for you to go through when you go to the campsite. I get to Austin at like it wasn't even that late. It was like 9, maybe 9:30. All the gates closed. All the
And
gates
locked.
closed. Yeah, and padlocked, as a matter of fact. And so
Dan, did they designate where you were supposed to go at that gate? Like, did they leave a sign that would tell you,
no,
like, please see
no, they
gate, insert
they may
number?
as they may as well have left a big middle finger there because they didn't give any directions of where you were supposed to go. And so it was like that was the first thing. And then nobody came. We didn't get stickers. We didn't get stamps. Nobody came and asked us about stickers or stamps. Like it felt like it felt like the entire thing was thrown together in like a weekend.
I kind of felt like the Cowboys were the ones that put this, not the NFL team, but like a bunch of Cowboys were like rounding up. Let's just lock them out. We'll just lock people out, and
Hmm.
then the people that are inside, they'll just be locked in, I guess. I,
Hmm.
I felt a little bit discouraged that I paid for a $100 sticker that I didn't receive. You know,
Yeah,
I could have
you
very
didn't even,
easily
like,
just
not even that you
not.
didn't use it, you didn't even get. You didn't even
Yeah,
get it.
yeah. I kind of enjoy putting that on my car. So then when I get back to South Dakota, people are see it on my car and they're like, "What's that?" And I'm like, "Oh, let me
Hmm.
tell you about NASCAR." And
Yeah,
then, next thing you know, we've both missed our appointments, and the sun has gone down. So I guess that's why I've started this podcast so that
yeah.
I can talk to you about NASCAR instead. So
No, of course, and
yeah,
you know me, fella. I like talking, and I like NASCAR now.
for sure,
You
for
know,
sure.
so but it generally felt. very rushed and very throw together. Um, I know that we had some questionable moments, you and I both, I think, going through security, trying to get into and out of the track.
Yeah, my thought is they might as well just not have security.
That's what I'm saying, man.
You know, I mean, I really felt like the policies that they laid out online were not what was laid out in person. And when you have the you know, you're gonna find out the more that our listeners listen to this podcast, they're gonna find that Kansas Speedway is by far my favorite speedway. And
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
well, you know that they will come to know that. Uh, and the key is that, like, hey, there's one thing that you can't do at Kansas Speedway. There are a couple things, but like the big one is no glass, right? Like you can bring in um, a full size pizza, okay, not a problem. You want a 6 pack of Busch Light, the official beer of NASCAR, totally fine, not a problem. Are they glass? That's a problem. Okay, you might drop it, you might turn it into a weapon. You just never know. No weapons. Okay, totally reasonable. But when they're like one drink per person, you're like, what are you talking about? And then we ended up just trying a cooler, and they were like, cool, yeah, sounds good. Come on through, sir. You know. And thank goodness we didn't have any alcohol. But if we did have any alcohol, I'd kind of heard from two people talking about it. They were a few rows up from us. We're talking about they got through the gate with alcohol, no problem.
Mm.
So I don't know how hard you want to enforce those things. The biggest frustration to me of the weekend was, and this is my main caution lap here,
Hmm.
is the construction, right? So we had bought an opportunity to meet the king, Richard Petty himself, and his son Kyle Petty. How cool was that? And
Pretty
we got the wristband and everything. And because of the construction, we had rode the tram all the way to one end and got in. And and then I'm asking the guy who wants me to renew. By the way, the first thing that he says is, "Hey, give me money to come back next year." And I'm like, "Where are the merch haulers?" Oh, you'll have to get on a tram and ride them all the way around
cool.
the track. You know, the largest track that NASCAR races at.
Mm-hmm.
It's huge, you know, Texas
Yeah.
sized. And now we've got to go all the way around. So that was very frustrating. We got stamped, we got back out, got on the tram, and the tram operator says it'll take 7 minutes. It took us well over 14 minutes.
Hmm.
We were
Almost didn't make it.
approximately
Almost
three
didn't make it.
minutes away from not making it to
Yeah.
meet the king, and that would have really spoiled my weekend there. So at least we did end up making it, you know. But the construction, I just felt like NASCAR wasn't a priority
No.
because these people have known. I got this mailer probably before the first snowfall, and it's got Coda on there, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So my point being, thank you for being a fan. How about thank you for running a racetrack well? You know,
Hmm.
I just wish that we weren't second or third class because I feel like the focus for Coda is F1, and I realize that F1 brings more money. But if you're going to host races, please try to make sure that all of your
Like,
race weekends you've
yeah.
got at least a footpath through there. You know what I mean? I understand that trying to run trams through the construction area probably not easy, but just maintaining that footpath between one end of the racetrack and the other seems important to me. So that's my biggest thing. The other minor gripe, I call it minor because I had paper towels. There were several people in the campgrounds that were not happy. They would consider this a red flag, but
That's very red flag. No
very
yellow.
much a red flag. Uh, no toilet paper, no toilet paper, and I. Luckily, our neighbors were great, and they were like, "Hey, if you're trying to find one with toilet paper, you're not gonna." Because I was going from like one stall to the next, and they're like, "Yeah, there is no toilet paper here," and I'm like, "Okay, you know, I don't know. I'm not a porta potty technician, but I would assume that those pumps that they use are
Hmm.
not made for some of the things I saw people carrying to the porta potties. You know,
No. No.
bandanas are they just don't disintegrate. So you know,
You know,
it's
apparently neither do dude
yeah.
wipes.
Oh, I've heard that. I've heard that.
Yeah.
Don't flush dude wipes.
You know,
Um,
it was very interesting how I got introduced to that because as I was driving up, right, because I ended up coming later on Friday, and I remember you would occasionally call and you'd be like, "Hey, just make sure this is the gate you're gonna go through, this and that or whatever, right?" And then I'm like, "All right, cool, I'll see you in a little bit." And I go and I drive for a little bit. I'd get another phone call. I'd be like, "Hey, just thought I should let you know, um, the porta potties don't have toilet paper, so we're using Charmin Ultra Soft."
well, no, Sherman is toilet paper, isn't it?
I meant to
I'm
say,
fairly certain.
I
Yeah,
meant to
we're
say,
using the quicker picker upper, but off brand.
mhm. Yeah.
So
I mean, it was okay. Listen, to be fair, like what you had wasn't off-brand. It was like it felt like an actual towel. Like it
yeah,
felt
it
like
was soft. You know, I did think about it later. You know what that actually was?
what was it?
Not branded, by the way, but shop towels. Those that was a package of shop towels, which is even worse for a sewage pump because they're made to like pick up oil and like be super durable. So like you can like rub your hands and get all
Best
the
of both
oil off
worlds,
of them.
baby. Best,
You
but
know?
listen. It's not my pump. That's all I'm saying. It's not my pump. And you know what? Clearly, all of the money that they saved from not investing into the race at Coda, they can replace their pump. I don't give a shit.
I guess so. I guess
Yeah.
so. No, you did. I saw you walk over to the
I
porta
give 'em-
potties. So
Well, no. Here's the thing.
oh,
I did not dare take a. I did not drop the Cosbys off at the pool
no number
into the pool.
twos.
No,
Okay.
no, no. So if you don't remember this, I don't think I ended up
Oh
waking you guys
yeah,
up. I left the whole racetrack to go
you
find
did
somewhere.
mention.
I went from gas station to gas station to gas station, and it was one of the things where it's like, you ever have like a moment of desperation when like you have to go to the bathroom and you just can't find a bathroom?
Yeah.
Yeah, the only place I ended up finding that had a bathroom that wasn't occupied and wasn't broken was like this like Hispanic grocery store. And I go in there and I clearly do not look like I belong. And so the lady at the front is just watching me, just hawk-eyed, like big-eyed, looking at me, watching me beeline for this bathroom before it's just destroyed, man. Oh. So no, I didn't take my chances on the Porta John.
Solid.
No.
Well, I suppose we'll move on to lap 8 here. Um, how about Dodge? Dodge coming back to the Truck Series.
This is one I don't know a whole lot about. Well, because did we even watch the Truck Series?
I'm trying to
I did.
think. I know that the Truck Series they weren't at Coda and they weren't at Texas Motor Speedway. Did we see them at Atlanta?
I
I don't
don't
think so.
think we did. No,
I don't
we
think you've
didn't.
ever seen a Truck Series race, which is
Mm.
oh no. I don't think that there's not a Truck Series race at Kansas that got cut. We lost our Truck Series race. So
So I'm not even going to
you're gonna have to see
Kansas.
trucks sometime.
No, I haven't seen truck races. The closest thing to that I saw was when we were at Texas Motor Speedway and they had like the little dirt derby
Yeah.
type thing. That's probably the closest to it. But no, we haven't seen any truck races in any of the races we've been to.
Not together. That's interesting.
I know.
So, um, which is okay. So here's the thing: Dodge is coming back, and I think that NASCAR can be a powerful marketing tool if you use it in the right way. So you've got to market it to the right people,
Hmm.
and I think that it's going woefully underutilized in dealerships. I
Mm.
think that you need to put a cardboard cutout of Denny Hamlin next to a Camry in a dealership and be
Hmm.
like, hey, um, with all the success that Denny has on the track, you too can be successful with a 2025 Toyota Camry XSE. You
Mm.
know, it's I don't know. That's my thought on it, but I wonder what Dodge is going to do with this because Stellantis has made some questionable at best decisions recently, and they're starting to kind of roll over a new leaf, and I hope that it's a good one because Dodge deserves to be a solid brand in America.
Yeah, I was very curious in the fact that I don't know, because like we didn't see like a whole lot of presence from Dodge at all.
And we won't. They aren't coming back until next year.
So did they used to be fairly prevalent?
Yeah, so
How did that
in
happen?
early to mid 2010s, they decided to leave the sport, and and part of that was it's one of those things where you like look at your sales and you're like, I don't know why our vehicle sales are down, and it's like, well, when was the last time you refreshed the charger? And they're like, 12 years ago.
Hmm.
Well, maybe people just bought one that's 4 years old then. You know,
Yeah. Hmm.
like it's one of those things. It's like, well, I don't want to refresh it if nobody's going to buy it. Well, maybe people would buy
Yeah.
it if you would refresh it.
Yeah.
So it's Dodge wasn't seeing a lot of success in the sport, and it's because they weren't making investments like the other manufacturers were. So hopefully they come back strong, and NASCAR has been seeing a lot of kind of vintage sponsors coming back.
Hmm.
Craftsman in the Truck Series, that was a big partner in the 90s.
Yeah.
And after Craftsman, after Sears closed and Craftsman was kind of spun off into its own thing and owned out of country, we weren't sure if we'd ever see them come back. And now, yeah, they're doing great. They're incorporating Craftsman into the sport really, really well. When you
Hmm.
go to see the trophy for the Craftsman Truck Series, they put it on
Yeah.
a Craftsman toolbox.
Oh,
So it's like, hey, you can't miss it, man. Like, who won the Truck Series this week? Oh, here he is, Lawless Allen with the with the Craftsman
yeah.
toolbox. So pretty snazzy setup there, but um, so these three laps here, 8, 7, and 6, are kind of our news section, and so now
Okay.
moving on to lap 7.
Hmm.
Um, Austin Cindric with a penalty. Now, this is an interesting one because we didn't get to see it. This goes
Hmm.
back to not always seeing where the cars are on track. But
Yeah.
you're familiar with the pit maneuver,
Very,
right? That
very,
the police do.
very.
And unfortunately, sometimes our NASCAR brethren think that they are the
Hmm.
police doing a pit maneuver. And I didn't get all the context of what happened between the 10 of Ty Dillon and the 2 of Austin Cindric. I don't want to say that these guys are backfillers, especially not Cindric, because he's really been on the rise recently. And surprisingly, Ty Dillon has come back in a really strong way too. So they're both on the uprise here.
Hmm.
And whatever happened between them, Cindric felt like it was Dillon's fault and right reared him into the wall. NASCAR has decided not to suspend um, Austin Cindric, even though they have in the past. And I
Hmm.
wonder if that has anything to do with the fact that they've changed the way that suspensions work. So it used to be you're suspended for a week, just done. You just not coming in for the week. It's no problem, but you're not going to earn any points that race, right? Now, if you get suspended for even one race, you lose all of your previous playoff points, all of your future
What?
playoff points. It's bad, man. It's really bad.
Hell nah.
And so it's one of those things where it's like, I feel like, and this is something that maybe our viewers and listeners don't know about me. I'm very interested in law. And so it's interesting to me when you put something in law that requires a minimum sentence. You're taking away the option from the judge to say like, "Hey, this is a felony. It comes with 25 years." Period. End of story. So it
It,
might
it it
that
eliminates for you to have discretion for any like extenuating circumstance.
absolutely, and I feel like NASCAR has kind of pigeonholed themselves with this wording to where they could have said a one race suspension may result in up to
Hmm.
this, you know? So
Yeah.
they might say, hey, we're going to take away all your previous playoff points, but not any future playoff points.
Hmm.
Or, hey, where you're at is where you're going to stay. You're not going to make any more points this year, you know? Depending on what they decided to do. But the way they wrote it, it says any previously earned and will be earned. So I think that we're not going to see a lot of suspensions this year,
Hmm.
at least not in the Cup Series.
I don't think
So
so. 'Cause I think that like when you have punishments that are so intense and you remove the ability to have discretion, um, it's a big deal to suspend somebody, right?
Right.
Because it practically takes them out of the competition for all intents and purposes.
Absolutely. It turns it into you have to win, and even if you do win, you're not safe in the playoffs like you used to be. So that's kind of an interesting deal where the playoffs have this deal with playoff points. So like Kyle Larson last year ran a great race through
Yeah.
the regular season. He
Mhm.
had he had like 6 wins, and so he had a ton of playoff points. And that's why stages are important. You want to stay out for stage points because you can get a playoff point in there too. Um, and then 5 extra playoff points with a win. And so even if you kind of struggle in the playoffs, if you had a really good year before that, it kind of floats you. You can kind of lean on, yeah, okay, so I didn't do well this week or last week, but I did really well during the regular season. So like, please keep me in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And so to lose those playoff points would really hurt a lot.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see in the past when drivers have right reared somebody. Um, I was at the Coke 600 when
Mhm.
Denny Hamlin got right reared by Chase Elliott, and that was way too fast. You're on Charlotte Motor Speedway. Everybody's going in a circle. It's a lot of speed involved and a lot of what could have happened. NASCAR said on their podcast this week that they took speed into account and kind of what happened. And so they were like, well, yeah, Ty Dillon was right reared into the wall, but they were only going like 100 miles an hour. And,
Mhm.
if you ask Georgia State Patrol, that's illegal. You can't you can't pit
Yeah.
people at 100 miles an hour. But, in NASCAR, it's okay. We'll just fine
Yeah.
them
Maybe. Private
$50,000.
property,
And
maybe.
yeah, we'll just take 25 points away and, we'll just call it even. And I'm like, I don't like saying what did happen. I like saying what could have happened, because it's not like Austin Cindric, and I guess I don't know this. We could look at his in-car video. Was he looking backwards to be like, all right, anybody coming? Anybody gonna, like, if I put him
Mhm.
in the wall right now, is he gonna get hit by somebody else that's
Yeah.
doing 100 miles an hour?
Yeah. It's like
You
just
just don't know,
checking my blind spot right quick.
right? I think we're clear. I think we're clear. Go ahead, right
Mhm.
rear him. you
Yep.
know,
Yep.
and with the way that these cars have been catching air,
Yeah.
you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, if you right rear him and it goes into the wall and the car picks up and flips, I just don't like the idea of taking your aggression out on track.
See, I share a different opinion.
All right, let's hear it.
So, I mean, me personally, it's like, you know, I'm a man of spectacle, right? My introduction into NASCAR was NASCAR fails, right? And I think that for a lot of folks that are coming into the sport now, that's kind of where it starts because that's the NASCAR related stuff that like, goes viral and gets attention. And so, like, you start with the spectacle, and there's times where you wish that there's a little bit more of it from time to time. Because it's like when you get into like the actual technical side of NASCAR that like the fans like you are really really into, right? It's one of those things where like you have so much context as an experienced viewer where you can kind of figure out like okay like we're gonna go check here check here. It's like you kind of know like you can pick up like who's the person to look at. You know what I mean? In my case, it's like unless we happen to catch a wave like with what we did with Cedric on that Saturday, um, it's just kind of lost, right? You have like moment to moment fun, but it's like to be as like locked in as you would be for like the rest of the race. I think would be kind of cool. But I'm also like we played NASCAR Heat, and I'm over here like pulling up like TVR, TVR, TVR.
Right? It's interesting because NASCAR on one hand punishes this kind of behavior, and on
Mhm.
the other hand, they use it to promote the sport.
That's the
We had
thing.
an incident where Kyle Busch and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. got into it, and Ricky threw a punch at Kyle, and then they suspended Ricky's dad from coming to races for like indefinitely, and because he was involved. I don't know how he was involved,
My
but
God.
it was one of those things where it looked bad for the sport, right? But it got so many views across NASCAR social media that they
Hmm.
just had to go for it. They had
Yeah.
to post it, and so it's like on one hand you're pulling in viewers for next week, and on the other hand you're punishing the people who pulled in the viewers.
I think that it's a conflict, and this is like where my business nerdiness is going to come out. So it's a conflict between like accomplishing the goal of getting more viewership and then tarnishing the brand that they want for NASCAR to have, right? Because what I think NASCAR like pivots a lot on with like their drivers is it's like it's competitive greatness, it's sportsmanship, it's this sort of family culture. And so it's like that kind of stuff um, I think attracts a lot of viewers that are very kind of like family focused, right? Like they a reason they like the sport is because of the values of NASCAR and the sport itself, right? And so if that's the brand that they want to portray, letting the racers pit maneuver each other into the wall and then duke it out on the asphalt at the end of the race would get a lot of views and would bring a lot of people to the sport, but it doesn't support the brand and what they're trying to do. So that's the challenge that I reckon they have. And eventually it's like it teeters to a point where it's like, okay, well, we can let this clip go up, but just this one and only this one time.
Right?
Right?
Interesting. Yeah, that's it's good to bring a business perspective to it because it's something that a lot of NASCAR fans just don't have or don't get. Um, so speaking of business, actually that leads us into lap 6 here about the lawsuit. So have you heard anything about this NASCAR lawsuit?
I heard like maybe I heard you and your dad talking about it like
Yeah.
while I was like passed out in the tent or something. Like, I've heard an inkling of this thing, but I don't know nothing of the details.
I'll bring you and the viewers and listeners at home up to speed on this deal. So here's the thing: NASCAR used to be a thing. Um, 2016, don't quote me on this. Mid 2010s, before the charter system was implemented, you and I, Dan, could
Hmm.
build a car that fits NASCAR's requirements. So we would still have to pass inspection to make sure that it's still considered a stock car.
Hmm.
How we would get that, I don't know. Maybe just Joe Gibbs left their garage door unlocked,
Probably. That's yeah.
whatever. And then we just paint the car ourselves, 10 to go radio, and show up at the track. Um, and here we are. We're going to race and see if we can make it in the top 40. The problem is that we haven't had a top 40 in a long time,
Hmm.
you know? And so there was some concern with like when you're trying to bring new people into the sport. Say you're
Hmm.
working with Kellogg's and you're
Yeah.
like, "Hey guys, we're going to put you on the car. We're going to put Tony the Tiger on the hood. It's going to be great."
Hmm.
By the way, we are legally obligated to let you know we might not race on Sunday. And that's just, could be a crazy deal. Car doesn't run right. We blow
Hmm.
right rear during qualifying. It's highly unlikely, but it is possible. And that little disclaimer turns so many sponsors off. They were like, wait, so like I'm gonna write you a check to be on the car, but the car might not race. Yeah.
Hmm.
So it didn't look good at all. And so they were like, we just want a guaranteed starting spot. And
Hmm.
NASCAR was inclined to say, you know what? That's fair. That's
Okay.
that's entirely fair. Um, here is a piece of paper that says you are guaranteed a spot to start on Sunday. And they
Okay.
gave that out for free to all of the existing teams.
Okay.
So that just means that if you start and your engine blows up, you still get a check, right?
Okay.
And you don't have to worry about qualifying to get in the top 40, which is usually not a problem anyway. We've
Hmm.
seen people who sold their charter and then just show up to the races that they actually wanted to race.
Yeah.
Because if you have a charter and you're required to make every race, and
Hmm.
so it's like, oh, well, I don't like short tracks. Well, that's too bad. You're gonna go, so or you're not gonna be in the playoffs. One or the other,
Hmm.
you choose.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of this interesting dynamic that it's introduced into the sport. And now these charters are literally worth $40 million. Last year we had a team that sold out. They were just kind of clearing house, and they sold their charters for $40 million. And so
That's
you've got
insane.
guys, I know, and you've got guys that want to get into the sport, that are in the Xfinity Series. Uh,
Hmm.
Prominent people, Dale Jr. wants to race on Sundays, but he does not want to spend $40 million on a probably this is going to get signed again. You
Hmm.
know, because those
Yeah.
charters don't say until the end of time. They say for the next 7 years you will have a
Hmm.
starting spot on Sunday. NASCAR did not want this to be an issue in the playoffs.
Okay.
Because every week people would show up and they'd be like, "Hi, I'm Jordan with 10 to Go Radio, and I'd like to know, um, what's the deal with the charter situation? Have you reached a deal with the teams?"
Mm-hmm.
They did not want to talk about this during the playoffs last year. So they said, we need to come to an agreement before the playoffs. Well, the playoffs came, and they said, listen here, we've done everything you want to do, teams. Everything that we are willing to do as NASCAR, we have done. It's in this charter decision. You either sign it by midnight tonight, or you lose your charter.
Okay.
So what are you going to do, Dan?
Well, you're either A, going to sign it, or B, you're not going to sign it and you're going to try to sue.
Yeah, I mean, I would sign it.
Mm-hmm.
Richard Silger signed it. Everybody signed it except for 2 teams, right? So you've got 2311, which is Michael Jordan, the basketball star, went in on a team with, I know, it blows your mind, right? Michael Jordan really likes NASCAR, and he worked with Denny Hamlin, the driver of the number 11, used to be FedEx Toyota, and they started their own team, 2311. They've put a lot of money into the sport. They just built a new race shop. Oh, that team has been fighting for more team rights than anybody. They're very vocal.
Mm-hmm.
They're new. They're hip. They're in style.
Mm-hmm.
Front Row Motorsports kind of came out of nowhere. Really, really quiet team. Just kind of keeps to themselves. And all of a sudden now they're suing NASCAR and saying, hey, you strong-armed us here. This is a monopoly. There is no other place that we can race these cars. We make the cars to meet your specifications, and NASCAR had to put those specifications together, right? So they spent that money internally. So they feel like, hey, you can't just take the car that we designed and race it somewhere else on Wednesdays, the Wednesday 10 to Go Radio sponsored series. You know what I mean? That's not okay. And so I can kind of see that from a NASCAR perspective. I see that the team spent a lot of money to build the cars to be in NASCAR, but I also understand that NASCAR spent money developing the car. So it's interesting how this lawsuit has been going. The only real movement we've seen was last December. It was decided that, hey, I know the 2311 and Front Row did not sign the charter agreement, but we're going to pretend like they did, okay? For this year. Just for the year, just until we can get it worked out in court. We're going to pretend like this agreement was signed, except for the part where it says you can't sue us. Charters are this interesting concept where you get to race on Sunday guaranteed. And now we've come to this point where there's a lawsuit over it, and the teams don't feel like they're getting everything that they deserve. And so they want a seat at the table, the officiating table, essentially, to make the rules of NASCAR. Okay. And NASCAR very much does not like that, as you can imagine, that they have been able to set the rules for their own sport for all these years, and it's family-owned, and so they want to keep that power. Now, for the first time ever, they are being sued for this, and so this lawsuit has triggered a counter lawsuit. And that's the new news here, is that NASCAR is saying, if you don't want to play our game, we're just going to take all of the charters away, and which we have the right to do, destroy them, and you can race your way back in on Sundays. Because what 2311 and Front Row did, kind of under the table, is it's my understanding that what happened was they asked other teams to not show up to NASCAR events, to protest NASCAR events, which you can imagine NASCAR has nightmares. Yeah, NASCAR has some nightmares of when this happened in the 60s and 70s. And they just had to find people off the street. They're just walking through the the parking lot, and they're like, hey, you own a Camry. How about you want to hop down here and make a little money?
That'd be the greatest. You mean you and I can fucking roll up, and then you can go race it. That'd be sick.
Yeah. I mean, that's essentially what they had to do back then.
I don't see what the problem is.
Well, the problem is that people paid to watch Richard Petty race,
And now instead they're watching honorary boomer race. And
Yeah,
so
and they get to see me send you into the wall at 150 miles
I
an hour.
get I guess so. And then, you only get a $50,000 fine for that. So I don't know how that's going to turn out. But that's kind of the new news here is that this counter lawsuit is saying that they colluded to wreck the sport. And they want damages paid by those two teams. And I think that NASCAR needs to be really careful not to not to just be unfair, but to appear that they're being unfair. With the
That's
cars, it looks bad when you pull one 2311 car and one front row motorsports car, and you're like, yeah, we're going to take these back to the R&D center and just look them over. And you're like,
hmm
oh, what other cars did you pull? None.
Yeah, and that's the thing that's like that. It's like the other stuff that we talked about affects like the acquisition of new fans. This really messes with like the conviction of the current fans, right? And like the thing about it is that you can like imagine this for a second, right? Somebody's been watching NASCAR for 35 years, right? It's their favorite sport. NASCAR spent 35 years building this brand and positive association with this fan, and like that they can ruin it, and it's gone. And that guy does not like NASCAR nearly as much forever until the end of time. And it's like it's not just about like do they win the court case, but can they win in the court of public opinion with their fans? And so the optics of how they navigate this thing, I think, are going to be a huge problem for them. On top of the fact of it's like, hey, like you have to prove damages to collect on damages, right? And I think that may be tough.
In this counter lawsuit, I think it will be. Um, Front Row has a letter essentially from Love's, who's a longtime sponsor of the 34 car.
hmm
And they said, hey, if you don't have a charter, we're not going to sponsor you because it means
So
that you might not
that's
race on Sunday.
clearly lost revenue.
Those are damages right there. And
Those very
so,
much are damages.
so what NASCAR says is, you could have a charter, you just didn't want it. You didn't sign for it. So that's your fault.
Mm.
And so they're going to go to the court and say this is a monopoly, and that's why these terms are in the contract, the charter contract. And
I could talk about that for hours. This whole monopoly thing, because
it's going to be interesting.
because the way that I look at it as a business fella is I'm like there is a reason there's a reason why people watch NASCAR compared to the other NASCAR like sports, right? And it's because they do it the best, right? The fans enjoy it the most. They have the best races. They have better strategy for acquiring new viewers, right? And so like a conversation I have all the time about this whole monopoly conversation is like, well, we want for companies like we punish companies and we talk trash on them when they don't do a good job, right? But then we have a problem when they do too good of a job and
It's
they snatch up
interesting, right?
market share. Yeah, it's like it's one of these things where it's like I feel like in that regard, it's like people only get upset about this stuff when it's convenient for them.
For sure. Or when they're on
On a
the
losing
losing
team,
side of that. Yeah.
yeah, that more often than not, that's usually what it is.
And you could claim like, oh, we spent all this money to get this race team together, and we can only use it for NASCAR because it's monopoly. No, look at Trackhouse. They race in
Mhm.
motorcycles, right? I
Yeah.
mean, and they race in NASCAR. So it's one of those things where it's like if you have multiple sports that you race in, um,
hmm
you can prove it just by looking down the street, essentially.
Yeah. Like it's not like NASCAR's got exclusivity clauses in like what sports you can race,
Right? They
right?
essentially, in a way, they do though, because what
hmm
they've done now with this Kyle Larson situation
hmm
is, and I guess this will be our lap 5 because it relates really well. So you can scratch the agenda item of lap 5 off there. We'll talk about that another time. But it's interesting to me. It's interesting to me. So like last year, what happened was Kyle Larson was going to run the double. This has been done before. It's not new.
hmm
A lot of people have done it. They go to Indianapolis in the morning, run the IndyCar race, the biggest IndyCar race. In fact, the biggest race in motorsports, the Indy 500. And then in the evening, they get on a helicopter and fly over to Charlotte and race the longest race in NASCAR. So the Coca-Cola 600.
Mm-hmm.
You mesh those together, and you've got 1,100 miles under your belt in one day,
Mm-hmm.
and of racing.
Yeah.
The G-forces on your body. I mean, it's just a feat to behold, right?
Sure. I can see
And
that.
it brings a lot of people who otherwise wouldn't watch NASCAR because they're going to talk about it like 17 different times during the IndyCar broadcast, right? They're going to be like, "Oh, and this guy, you're going to watch him tonight on Fox. He's going to be racing in the
Yeah.
Coke 600 at Charlotte. I wonder how this is going to affect him hitting the wall that hard, you know?"
Yeah.
And so a lot of these people are otherwise going to not have anything to watch that night. They're going to decide, you know what, I'll watch the Coke 600.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's good for NASCAR to have that.
I agree.
Where it falls apart a little bit is there was a rain delay, similar to us starting this episode.
Yeah.
and so the Indy 500 started late, and
Didn't
that
finish
meant
on time.
yeah, so he didn't get out of there on time. So they had a different driver lined up to drive the number 5, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they did. Justin Allgaier did a great job. And then when Larson showed up, he was ready to jump in the car,
Mm-hmm.
but it was rain delayed. And it ended up they raced over halfway. And so NASCAR called it. They said it's the Coca-Cola 301, and this guy's won it because the rain is so bad. It's going to be so bad. We're just not gonna race again tomorrow. And so they called it, and Larson never did get to drive in the 600. And then the idea was, remember how I said that the charter says you have to race all races on the schedule? He didn't race all races on the schedule, so he needs a waiver. A waiver from NASCAR that says, hey, listen, we know you broke the rules and it's okay. And they waited at least a week. I wonder if they didn't wait 2 weeks to get this waiver signed. And there were a lot of people who were like, yo, I'm going to stop watching NASCAR if they don't let Kyle Larson back into the playoffs.
Yeah.
It's that serious.
Mm-hmm.
And, which, respect. I totally understand it.
Mm-hmm.
What NASCAR was saying is there are people who came to the Coca-Cola 600 to watch Kyle Larson race, and when he wasn't there, they were sad. And I understand that, but also if you're that big of a Kyle Larson fan, you knew that he was going to be an Indy, They just want to be prioritized. NASCAR wants to be prioritized over any other series. It's good for NASCAR racers to race in other series, like all the dirt racing that Kyle Larson does throughout the week. But at the end of the day, they want you to focus on NASCAR. And so that waiver has become much more strict now to essentially say if it's not a health-related thing, like the birth of a child or a family medical emergency, you're not going to get a waiver. Waivers just aren't going to happen. They're not going to happen for suspensions. So
the big thing I wonder is what does NASCAR actually have to gain from that, like materially? Because the other like this, right? They theorize that this is going to cause for people to alter their decision making and decide, hey, maybe I won't race in this other thing, so I know that I'm solid for this, right? But even that's only hypothetical. All that I feel like this really serves to do is piss the fans off, right? Because it just puts red tape around something that doesn't really need it, Because at the end of the day, it's not like it's fellas' fault that the other series got rain delayed and then your shit got rain delayed out and totally canceled. I don't see how that was a precedent-setting situation for them to alter how they did this, unless they were planning to do this already and they just found this as a reason.
It makes you wonder, right? Because now Kyle Larson is going to race again in the Indy 500 this year, and there's speculation that if it's rain delayed, he's not going to race at all. He's just going to get down to Charlotte early, which will be really disappointing for any IndyCar fans. But it's one of those things, and he'll go into it with that mental state of hey, I raced for 3 weeks to try to get into the Indy 500 because they don't have a charter system. It's not just well, you're really good at racing other things, so welcome in. You're guaranteed in. No, there is no guaranteed in IndyCar, so you have to race your way in. And he did that, and so if he does it again and then doesn't get to race, what kind of mental state does that put you in for the Coca-Cola 600?
Definitely a very poor one. It's gonna cause you to underperform for sure, right? And it's like you know that like somebody like that's also thinking about the fact like he's thinking about that. He's thinking about the fans that went out there to go see him, and it's one of those things where it's like you can like go and race these things, especially when they're like super back to back, like it sounds like Indy and Kokar. Um, but like you also as the racer got to be willing to accept the risks of that, right? Like you have to be looking at this and be like, okay, if this goes wrong, like I need to be ready for like to do some fan service because people are going to be upset, right?
For sure.
Or like I acknowledge the fact that I could do all of this work and it turned out for nothing. You know what I'm saying? And it's like you have to be willing to accept that as a possible reality when you're doing something like that. Because otherwise, like you will set yourself up for disappointment, and then like yeah, he'll underperform at Coca-Cola if that's the case if he doesn't race at Indy.
Well, I guess lap 4 and 3 are going to kind of fly right by here because we don't have an ARCA race to discuss. We don't have a truck race to discuss. But we are going to circle back to lap 2 here.
Mm-hmm.
What you and I are both excited to talk about, the Xfinity race that we were able to see in
Oh
person in
yes,
Dakota.
sir. That was hands down like the best race that I've seen thus far. It was the best
It
one.
was very good.
Yeah,
It was an emotional roller coaster for me.
yeah. Because I remember because we weren't originally paying any attention to him. We were listening to somebody else. And then um, when he got the penalty and they sent him back to the very back, um, I remember like because we were like because I was having a conversation with your dad. I was like, surely there's no way he can pull this back, right? And your dad just gives me this look. He's like this is my POV of him. He's just like, just is like almost as if he was like, get ready, watch this shit.
Watch this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it was just, it was crazy. Because who was it that he was like competing with? It wasn't Bush, was it? Right at the very front that
No,
he
so
was battling with?
like at one point in time we had William Byron up there. Are you
Mhm.
talking about the number 1 car?
I think so, yeah.
So let's try to stay chronological here. So we were listening to Connor Silich in the number 88 machine,
Okay.
and sponsored by WeatherTech, and
Ah,
uh,
you're right.
and he was the one that we were listening to the entire race. We were listening to his radio, and
Oh,
that's
sorry.
what confused me was when he got that penalty.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, wait a minute, what happened? And there was no
Mm-hmm.
replay. There was no like all
Mm-hmm.
that's where we learned what the driver learned at the same time the driver learned it.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're listening to the same frequency. And so when they're saying, hey, you didn't hit the commitment line, the caution came out before you hit the commitment line.
Mm.
And my thought on that is it's a safety issue. If you're going to tell me that I'm a car length away from the commitment line, because I
Mm-hmm.
get it. What NASCAR is going to say is, well, we set a commitment line and it's so far out, that you could pivot out of there
Mm-hmm.
um, without hitting the sand barriers. But I would say to NASCAR that you can't miss the sand barriers in your own Camry
Mm-hmm.
during the championship race. You know what I mean? So I don't know. It's one of those things that you don't want to penalize a guy. And I realize that I'm going to sound biased here because I am a Connor Silich fan.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, I think it's a safety issue when you're a car length away going pit road speed about 55 miles an hour
Mm-hmm.
to try to like just abort mission there.
Yeah, to try and like zip
And
back over and try to get back up to speed. Yeah.
yeah, because you're not looking over there. You're fully committed to pit road, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It was to me it was kind of a goofy deal, but it was just the motivation that Connor needed to come back and win this thing, and so he ended up restarting from the rear for the second stage, and he worked his way back up into had to be the top 15
Mm-hmm.
by the end of stage 2 there, and
Yeah,
then
it was really quick. Like he had jumped up like 15 positions after like 3 or 4 laps.
yeah,
It was
yeah, and
crazy. But like
usually
those rear positions, like he just blew past them.
And usually you don't see that at a road course. Road
Hmm.
courses are difficult to try to get position on. And
Yeah.
so it was really interesting to watch that and to hear over his radio, like, you're the fastest car on track.
Yeah.
And so what you were talking about there just a second ago was about the one car,
Hmm.
which is interesting because that's a teammate of his. In a sense, he's a Trackhouse driver, but he's driving a Junior Motorsports car.
Hmm.
And so, with the number one, Carson Quapple, I think is who's driving that car now. We're pretty early on into the new series, so please don't come for me, folks, if I'm wrong there. But
Be really mean
I,
to him in the comments.
I think
Lampoon
Mr.
this fella.
I think Mr. Quapple is the one, and he usually is not super great on road courses. So it was interesting watching Connor get a run for his money there, and especially against a teammate, you can't just dump them. You can't just bully them and hit their door. And at one point we heard over the radio, your front end cannot take another hit.
Yeah,
Do
that was
not
what they were
hit
saying.
people
Like
with
for
your
like
bumper.
the last 15 laps of the final stage, like he was over. He was like, you can't take anything else to that front bumper, nothing.
Right. So it was really cool to see Connor come back to win that. And I did end up finding the win car being made by Lionel on Circle B's website. I couldn't find it on Lionel's website, but I found it on Circle B, so I ordered it on Circle B.cast. Not a sponsor of the channel yet,
Yet,
but Circle B, give me a
Soon.
call. So we'll
absolutely.
see.
Okay, listen. I want to show this real quick because I
Yeah,
don't
go
know when
ahead.
I'll get a chance. I don't know when I'll get a chance to show this, but so far my collection of cards is coming along very, very nicely.
Absolutely.
I'm a big fan. I need to get like a bigger like case for it because old Yahoo is kind of sticking out the side here. Um, I feel like what'll happen is that I'll continue to accumulate these and I'll just have like a big wall, like a big wall deck for them. Yeah, I kind of like that, like a shadow box almost, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It is nice to look at.
mhm, it really is, especially like it's funny because it's like I'm so new that I don't really recognize anybody. So you'll hand me a card and just be like, "That's Jesse Love. Go ask him to sign that."
Yeah. It is definitely interesting, and then like later to be able to say you met that guy. I did? Yeah, you met that guy. He was the one that we didn't catch in the trailers. We had to catch him outside of the trailer.
Yeah, he was leaving the
Yeah.
street around the back.
Yeah, he was on his way to the golf cart, but the golf cart driver wasn't there yet. So it was like, all right, perfect opportunity to get it signed.
Wonderful, wonderful.
So
I keep kicking this camera.
that's okay.
It is really cool. Like, so one of the things that I've noticed about like anytime that we go to like the haulers is that the experience that you have like varies so differently from driver to driver. When we went and saw Jesse, like he seemed like very attentive and like that kind of stuff. When we went and met, I think it was when we met the King. That fella didn't seem to know what planet he was on.
Hey, be nice to the king, but I do feel like Richard Petty's trips to the track are gonna be slim pickings here shortly.
Yeah, I believe it.
One thing that I did pick up on that I thought was kind of interesting. Oh, I should introduce our side host here before he leaves. Thomas,
Thomas,
the big dog. Thomas, the big dog. He's going to be our good buddy and stick with us sometimes.
Thomas
I think
loves
he just
to
heard
see.
a door.
Thomas loves when I put animals up to the camera.
No, he does not.
It's his favorite.
No, it is not his favorite. So, I did notice that the king focused on his son's voice more than anybody's, right?
Yeah.
So like I said a couple things to him of like, hey, can we get a picture, and the people in the hauler were kind of pointing him for the picture, and he was just out of it. And the second that Kyle said, Dad, smile at the camera, they want a picture. And, oh, well, yeah, sure. And I think that has something to do with old age, where you're just kind of you're focused on voices that you know and remember, and I think that that's really cool. But I do feel like travel is probably not something that and I don't know where Richard is based out of. Maybe he is out of Texas, and so that was a good opportunity for him to get down there. But yeah, Well, that
Yeah.
was a perfect timing to bring up that card signing deal because
Hmm.
two of those guys were Xfinity drivers, and we were on the
Hmm.
Xfinity lap. So
Yeah. It was honestly like the fact that because the thing about it with Richard Petty is the fact that like you're definitely right. Like as he gets older, he will not be making nearly as many public appearances, and so it's like it kind of makes it even better the fact that we managed to make it right in the nick of time to get there.
I am very proud of that.
Yeah.
So that's definitely going to get
That was
printed on
all
the
you,
front
man.
wall.
That was all you. Me and your dad were getting swamped by security. We got through security. We're like, where the fuck did he go?
I was about to start flipping tables. Like, gentlemen, you don't understand. We need to get over here right now. Like, you can hold the cooler. If you want to look through the cooler, you can hold on to it for
Yeah.
now. We'll be
Hmm.
back later. But,
Yeah.
yeah.
Nah.
So,
It was good. We ended up making it. That's all
yeah,
that matters.
that is all that matters. Well, we are on the final lap here. We're on the
Hmm.
white flag is out. And so this is the cup race.
Okay.
What do you think of that reconfiguration? I know you probably didn't watch the Coda race last year, but the
Hmm.
idea is that they changed it so that we would end up getting um, more viewing time. You'd see the cars more often, more laps, but less mileage.
Yeah.
Um, just knowing that, what do you think of that change?
So I think about it because what you're referencing is the whole thing where like there was a big long stretch that they cut from the track, and I think that I think that it was a good call when you consider that there's not a whole lot of people sitting out there, and so it does give the rest of us more track time, which I think it's like because you think about it like this, right? It's like you can make changes that serve the sport, or you can make changes that support the fans. And I look at this like they made a call in favor of the fans so that we had more visibility time. We got to see him go around more times, and I think that makes, I mean, that makes for a good race. Because the thing is that like there's a whole section of the track that you either get to watch on the jumbotron or you get to watch it at home. And so I mean, I don't have any reference for how they did it before, but I think it makes sense.
For sure, it was kind of a hairpin. You'd bring a lot of speed down that front stretch, and I do think that if I was watching it at home, I might have missed that.
Mm.
But definitely being there, it made a whole lot of difference to be able to see them, and I think it made for more tire wear too. You
Mm.
know, more curves, more tire wear.
Yeah.
One thing that was brought up by a few different drivers is track limits.
Mm.
Now, my thought on track limits is, hey, boys have at 'em. That's kind of an old saying from NASCAR a long time ago. Is we just let the boys do whatever they want to do. And
Mm.
if you find it in your heart to drive through the grass, if you can make that faster than everybody else, then they will follow
Mm.
your lead. You
Mm.
know, but
Yeah.
it's
Not
not
here.
faster. We didn't see a lot of it, but
Hmm.
apparently Carson Hocevar was upset that they didn't have they didn't send out a memo that like, hey, we're not keeping track of track limits. Like you guys do whatever
Hmm.
you want to do, because he
Mm.
says he would have tried more different things. You know,
Yeah.
pushed the
So he
boundaries.
didn't know that going into the race. I feel like that's a failure on behalf of the team. How do you not? Because other people
Well,
like figured it out.
it's kind of a little it's kind of a little bit like the staffing situation at Coda, where it's like, hey, these are the rules, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Don't bring in more than one drink per person.
Hmm.
And you know, we've seen people just waddle on in with a full cooler, you know,
Yeah,
puking
and then
full
they
of
race
beers, and you're
making
like,
flag
huh,
trying to get you a four loco in.
how did that happen, gentlemen? I don't know how you
Hmm.
got that through the gate, but
Yeah.
it's one of those things where it's like, don't make the rule a rule if you're not going to enforce it.
Yeah.
And I think that that's where he was coming from, and I agree with that. You know,
Hmm. I see. So the standard has been that there are these track rules, and then they just took them off for this one. And
they didn't take him off. They just said, you know, they just didn't enforce him. Like there
Hmm.
were times where like you'd see a guy like dip into the grass and be like, oh, that's a penalty. You know, he might be ahead of me for now, but he's definitely gonna have to serve a penalty for that,
And
and
then
he
it just doesn't.
never did. So it's
Yeah,
like,
that's what's really tough, man. Is that because like fundamentally where that becomes a problem is it's that like it's an expectations management thing. And so it's like if I expect that these are the rules of engagement and then I find out as I go through the race that that's not the case, like I feel slighted because if I had known any of that, then I would have raced totally different.
100%.
You know, so.
So Carson will have his opportunity next year. We'll
Mhm.
see. I do feel like Carson is gonna break through. He's gonna win a race this year. I
Yeah.
feel like Spire is going to find themselves in victory lane more than once, and I'm hoping, really hoping, one of those times is with Michael McDowell.
I hope so. I remember you've kind of swapped courses because your main fella now is Michael McDowell, and then when we started, I know it
100%.
was Kyle Busch.
It
Can
was
we
Kyle
can we
Busch.
talk about that for a second? Can
You
we have a
know,
conversation?
this is
Because
our first green white checkered where we've added a lap to the race.
I know, I know, but this is something I
So
really want to talk about.
this
Um,
is this is great. So you want to
yeah,
hear the story of how I switched from Kyle Busch to Michael McDowell?
I'd love to hear it.
All right. So the deal is that that VIP pass hanging on the wall over there was given to me because of NASCAR Rewards, which I highly recommend. It's totally free. You should sign up today if you haven't. Um,
Mhm.
but
Video sponsor.
so video sponsor. Hey, listen, they can be a video sponsor if they get me one more of them VIP passes. So we'll see. But
One for me too. One for me too.
for sure. Well, who do you think I'm going to take into the pits with me?
My
Uh,
man.
Dan the Man. Anyway, we were in the pits during
Hmm.
qualifying, which is the perfect time to talk to your cup drivers, right? Because they just got done with qualifying, they don't have anything else going on that day. They're going to review a few things in the hauler, but like for the most part, Saturday is a significantly less stressful day than Sunday is. You don't want to bug a guy on Sunday.
Hmm.
So, which has always kind of boggled my mind as to why they don't do more driver appearances on Saturday. Like flip
Yeah,
flop them.
like
Just make the
front load him into Saturday, then maybe pull back on him on Sunday.
Yeah, like put all the Cup guys, all their appearances should be on Saturday when they don't have to race. And
Yeah,
then
the
all the
Xfinity guys
Xfinity
on Sunday.
guys, post race, they can just hang around for another day and then do appearances on Sunday. And so then the people who are like really, really focused on Cup are going to meet a couple of Xfinity drivers on Sunday because they're there for the Cup race. And then the people who are,
Yeah,
into
it's like
both of
cross
them, the
pollinate. It's
hardcore.
good for
Yeah,
everybody else.
yeah, exactly. Anyway, we've gotten off track a little bit.
Hmm.
So I watched Kyle qualify fourth, and I'm like the biggest Kyle Busch fan ever because I watched this movie Rowdy, and I felt like he got a lot of hate that he didn't deserve. And so I was like, man, Kyle Busch restarting with RCR. RCR is an awesome team, Chevrolet, like let's go. And I was so excited to get him to sign this car. It was his first win with RCR. And so I've got this Lucas car that I'm going to have him sign. And I follow him back to the garage, and I kind of follow this other guy that's got an RCR T-shirt on or
Hmm.
dress shirt, and he's like holding the hat with like glasses and a Sharpie inside. And so like as soon as Kyle gets out, he throws his helmet on the car and like just getting ready to go. This guy hands him his hat, and he like drops his glasses, and the guy grabs the glasses and hands them back to him, and he's just all
Hmm.
ticked off, and I'm like, Kyle, you qualified fourth. Like mentally, I'm
Hmm.
thinking, buddy, you should be a happy feller right now. Like, did you not see the scoreboard? Because I did. You know, you're starting fourth tomorrow, man. That's second row. Like, this is great news.
Yeah.
And so I was like, hey, congratulations on the qualifying effort, man. Really excited. Can you sign this car for me? And he's like looking to his buddy for a pen, and I've got a pen, so I hand him the pen, and he just scribbles it really quick, and throws the car back to me, and just is walking at breakneck speed. Like if there
Hmm.
was somebody that stepped out of that garage, they were getting plowed over. Uh, so I was like, I get it. You got places to be, but like, have a second for your fans. But I was like, you know what? I don't know what he has going. Just let it go. It's not a big deal. Still a Kyle fan. The next day, and my hardcore listeners out there will recognize that this is the closest finish in NASCAR history day.
Hmm.
So it was rain delayed. We were sitting out there in the rain, this other Kyle Busch fan and they were waiting for these guys to come out.
Hmm.
There was a bunch of people there that had RCR um, lanyards, and you'll notice that one says NASCAR. So NASCAR got
Hmm.
me into the race. RCR got people into the race. Those people had paid to meet Kyle. And so, talking with them, I was like, they should go first. We'll just kind of hang out here, and if we catch Kyle on the way to the drivers' meeting, that'd be great. And so we're sitting there in the rain. All these guys that paid for the deal are sitting under the hauler has like a lift that lifts the car in and out, and so it's a good canopy. They just leave it extended, and then it's a good canopy for rain and stuff, and provides shade. So they're all sitting under there. Buddy and I and my dad are all standing out here. We don't have an umbrella. We're just kind of winging it, and eventually Dad's like, I'm just going to go sit under the Sunoco. Sunoco, the official fuel of NASCAR, has a little like mock gas station. And so there's no actual pumps, but there's like little tables, and it's like a congregation area, for VIPs only. And so he's like, I'm going to go stand over there so I don't get wet. And I'm like, all right, cool, no problem. I'm going to meet Kyle Busch, and I'm really excited about it. And he was not in the hauler. And so we like went over by where the other drivers were. We saw other drivers walking by and like got autos and picks and stuff, and we like walk over by the fence, and I'm asking people by the fence like, hey, has Kyle Busch come through yet? Oh yeah, he was like one of the first guys to come through. When? An hour ago? So he never showed up to the hauler. He never intended to meet any of the people for the meet and greet. Like, I just felt so betrayed. And so I was a little bit upset that I didn't just stand there by the media center, and but I was like, it is what it is. He went straight from his personal motorhome to the media center, and that was kind of when I was like, you know what, I don't know how I feel about Kyle Busch. And so I walked around every hauler in the rain during the rain delay to see if I could get anybody to sign their hero cards. So they've got these cards, and I don't know if I've got one handy. You saw it at the race. They had one for Ross Chastain at the safety booth. So these hero cards are about an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper with the car and the person, and a little bit about the team, whatever. So they leave them outside of each of the haulers, so you can kind of go hauler to hauler and collect them. But I wanted someone to sign one and make it out to my niece, so that I could bring it back home to her. She really would not care. 7 years old would not care.
Doesn't care who it is.
Exactly. Like, this person races on Sunday, and I can point them out on the TV. That's what matters. And so I'm walking around, and who is it but Michael McDowell, standing outside of his trailer, outside of the hauler, getting wet with the rest of us. And he's just having a good conversation with this guy about a race that he raced like 4 races ago. And just a random guy, And so I kind of walk up in there and get in on the conversation and talk to him a little bit. And I told him about the time that we, because it was my buddy who picked me up in Nashville. I got a buddy in Tennessee that picked me up from the Nashville airport. He went west to pick me up. He lives in the middle, and he had to go west to pick me up to go east to Bristol. Great guy, and he's done it a couple of times. I really appreciate, one of my best friends, and anyway, he's a big Michael McDowell fan, and so I'm like, all right, we'll go see your driver. That sounds cool. So we met at a Kubota dealership in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I told him about that, and he remembered me. He's like, oh yeah. Yeah, you had the Tony the Tiger. Granted, the Tony the Tiger jacket is kind of rare, but either way, he remembered me, and he remembered the advice that he gave me about. He was the first autograph I got. I got a NASCAR flag, and I wanted to get it as a checkered flag, and I wanted to get it signed by like a bunch of NASCAR drivers, and he was the first one. And so he was telling me, like, if you hold the top, I'll hold the bottom with one hand and then sign. It should be taut when I sign it. You know what I mean? So it doesn't ripple up. And I still firmly hold the belief that Michael McDowell has the best autograph in NASCAR today. Of the current NASCAR drivers, so many of them are trying to get into like drawing a snowman and saying that is their autograph. Michael McDowell, I tell you what, man, his autograph is cool. But I was like, wow, you remember me. That's really cool, And we had a pretty good 10-15 minute conversation. And he signed this to my niece and was all excited about it, hopes that she enjoys it. and that was kind of the turning point for me. It was like, you know what? I don't care how my guy does on track. I just care that he's a good guy in general. And that book that I brought with me to have him sign, and I'll link it in the comments. It's a great book. And, really opens your eyes to Christianity if you're not already there. But even if you are already there, it's just really cool to hear from some of these people that you see on the TV and you kind of look up to. So I was like, you know what? I want the driver that I root for to hold those same values.
Yeah.
I looked at some of the sponsors that Kyle Busch had, and I was like, man, I don't feel good about going to church wearing a shirt that says "Drink Rebel Whiskey," you know. And so when I can wear a shirt like you saw, I've got that K-Love pit shirt of Michael McDowell's, and like there was one person that came up to me and was like, I only listen to K-Love. It's great, you know. Thanks for being a part of that team. And I'm like, I'm not a part of that team. This is Monster Energy Cup Series. Like,
Yeah.
it hasn't been the Monster Energy Cup Series since the late 2010s, but okay.
Yeah.
You know, it's just one of those things where it's uplifting, it's happy, it's good, you know, and like the sponsors this year have been pretty good too, you know, workforce, occupational health and safety, you know, like that's a good thing, you know, and go bowling, like just telling people get out and go bowling. That's fun.
Yeah.
You know, good sponsors, good, wholesome, family friendly sponsors. And that's the kind of group I'm in. But I really do feel like, and he said it in his interview, the video went up previously to this one, is a Michael McDowell interview at NASCAR, and he really is in his prime. You know, this is the best team. This is the best equipment. He's gonna get a win before he retires. One more win. Let's go.
Oh, absolutely.
That's my opinion. But that's how I became I went from Kyle Busch to Michael McDowell.
Yeah.
So,
you know, and I'll touch on this for a second, and then I think we can wrap up because I think we're over time. You know, the biggest thing that I think about when it comes to like these racers and athletes and things like that is it's like you have like just taking the time to like sit down and talk to somebody and remember somebody and the interaction that you have with them doesn't take a lot of work. It's not like a major lift to do that, but it makes all the difference. Like it completely converted you over to like, hey, like this is the guy that I'm gonna root for. And I think that not even just in NASCAR, but I think in a lot of sports that's kind of lost. And it's like the whole like, you know, celebrity showmanship mindset kind of jumps into it. That's okay. You can take a second. You can get Thomas up into the conversation. There we go. Good job, Thomas. But that stuff makes such a big difference, right? And I think that the fact that, and I think that NASCAR drivers in general accomplishes better than any other athlete in any other sport. And I think it's a huge reason why like there's so many people who are so diehard for this sport. Like more so than what I've seen for football and basketball and all these other sports, right? And I think that that's one of the coolest things that has drawn me to NASCAR, even though like I struggle to understand the sport. I can't remember the names of the drivers and any of this other stuff, right? But it's like the drivers that I meet are always very nice. They're always very welcoming. And what that does is it fosters this community of race fans that you can get on a train and you can have a conversation with anybody, and you just can't do that anywhere else. And I personally really appreciate that about it.
absolutely. And I think back to the times where I've gotten this wall of autographs autographed, and the times that I did run into somebody that was kind of stubborn or upset was when I was using my VIP access. And I think to myself, you know, you've got to take that with a grain of salt because they don't expect to see fans at those times. You know, I think back to like when we met Ty Gibbs, you know, and he was just signing everybody's everything, taking pictures with everybody, you know, super great guy. And it's because that was dedicated media time to meet with the fans. And unfortunately, sometimes you've got more fans than you have time for. You know, so you've got to sell a maximum of 100 wristbands. I saw that C. Bell is doing an autographing this weekend, and it's limited to 100 wristbands. Totally understand that. You know, but it's one of those things that you've got to go into it knowing that. Like they announced with the Toyota booth,
Mhm.
they were like, "Hey, if you don't have a wristband to meet Bubba Wallace, you're not gonna meet him. We just don't have unlimited time."
Like,
So
do the drivers just not know that there are fans back there for VIP? Because I feel like
they
you should
do.
expect you should still expect the random encounters if you know fans are back there and you're going to be
They
traveling.
they do, but like, how do you get a pass to be in the locker room for the Chiefs? That's the way I look at it. Is like either
Mhm.
they're preparing for the game or they're coming off of the game. And
Mhm.
VIP or hot passes have gotten further and further away from what they used to be. It used to be friends and family. Like you had to be like basically related to one of the
Mm.
drivers. And
Okay.
then you had to be good buddies with the team. So like an executive for FedEx, which chances are good maybe you mail that guy 4 passes and none of them get used because he's in a suite. He doesn't want to be next to the tire changers, and you know what I mean.
Yeah.
That's not a good view. There's no
Mhm.
food or drinks down there. I'd rather
Yeah.
be in a suite. And then it expanded a little bit more into like, hey, the manufacturers should get some. So like, my
Mhm.
brother-in-law works for Ford, and he's like, yeah, if I get enough training points, I can get VIP to Kansas. I'm like, what? Well, yeah, it's a thing. So they're just sending mechanics to be down there. And like during the race when I had VIP, I was like, geez, there are a lot of people here. Like we're kind of crammed in. There were people who were kind of unaware of their surroundings, and so like there are team members that are trying to move a rack of tires, and you're in the way. It's I kind of understand their frustration, but like also when you ace a season like I did to get that many points to earn VIP, I feel like one race, you know, work with me here. Work with me a little bit. But I do think that I am going to try to pull back a little bit on this next time that I have VIP,
Mhm.
and just try to take into account that hey, these guys don't owe you
Yeah.
a signing. They don't owe you time. I do
Mhm.
want to try to get for the channel. I want to try to get a couple of interviews. You know, but it might be one of those things where I talk to them on Saturday and they say, hey, this time would work better or whatever, and
Mhm.
we set something up for the future. So we'll
Yeah.
see. The only way that you'll see is if you subscribe.
Yeah. That's the only way. You got to subscribe and like and share it with the other NASCAR fans that you know.
Exactly. Grow the
Um,
following, and then
mhm.
eventually we'll get
Or
media passes, Dan.
yeah.
Then
Or
then we'll
even or
be in the
even
pits all the time.
man, wouldn't that be something? That's exciting. So, we got anything else we want to hit on?
I don't think so. I think this is the checkered flag. This is the
I
end of
think
the
so.
race.
What a
So
strong start. What a
I
strong
tell you
first week.
what, great episode 1. Really looking
I
forward to next
agree.
week.
Me too. We'll see you next week.
Alrighty. Thanks everybody.
I'm gonna put my cards up and display them real nicely with my Buzz
Oh, are
Lightyear.
you?
Perfect.
Now, Dan, we need to get you a diecast.
A what?
Diecast car, like the number 20.
Yeah. Oh, you're. Oh, yeah. Yeah, because I don't have any. I don't have any other memorabilia other than that.
Right? I got you. I'll get you some cars.
My man. My man. All right. Is this over? Can I stop it?
Yeah. And then let's just jump on Discord.